This is Not Aliens, and your host, Jared Murphy, where we are looking into and interviewing and researching and discussing the possibility of ancient advanced humans on this planet today amongst us, what you identify as UFOs, right down to ancient advanced engineered soil. There are evidences all around this world that indicate an advanced human race was once here, is possibly still here. It is our past and it is our future. Join me as we interview and explore this amazing planet and its mysteries. Welcome back to Conflict. Oh my gosh, we're not on Conflict Radio. Welcome back to Not Aliens. This is Jared. Of course, I co-host Conflict Radio with Michael, and this is specifically notaliens.com, and we are here with Dan and Teresa Duke, siblings, of course, not married. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic. Thank you for having us back.
It's so fun. Thanks. Yeah, you're welcome. I love having you guys on, and if everybody's not going to catch that, personally, it's just really good people. So selfishly speaking, we're going to have a very interesting interview today, but the reality is that it's wonderful when work and history and the universe can come together where, two really incredibly smart and interesting and talented people can all turn out to be lifelong friends. Love this.
Oh, yeah. I love it.
So pre-interview, we were discussing something that we're just going to tease at, and we have to get into it right away because it is super interesting. Daniel Duke is working on a project that is going to be forthcoming about next summer or fall. And you want to talk a little bit about it?
Oh, yeah. Well, this, I believe, as far as I know, will be the third and final book that I will write on Jesse James. And the first one dealt with the treasures and how it tied back to the Templar. The second one dealt with Jesse himself faking his own death and living a long life here in Texas. The third one is it goes more into his contacts and different groups and people he was related to, and related to by blood and also through different organizations, secret organizations and things of that nature. For example, he was related by blood to former President LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, and not only him, but also a notorious character in our more modern times who went by the name of Billy Saul Estes. And some people alleged that he was, LBJ's man in the shadows, and he was the first man. Just one thing about Billy Saul, he was the first man in American history to be acquitted for murder because cameras were in the courtroom, and he was called a con man, a killer, a hitman, all sorts of things. Anyway, he too was distantly related to Jesse James. And that's as far as I want to talk about him. So he's passed away by now. He was a nice man. I met him in person, but he, you just don't want to make him too or his family too angry, I guess. So
why?
Yeah, I don't know.
What? I mean, you got some rebel blood in you. Come on.
Yeah, that's true. I don't want to go picking a fight with the wrong group.
So you would fight if it was the right group.
Yes.
Daniel Duke.
Behind their backs.
Yep. Daniel Duke arrested for beating up toddlers. Yes. I had them all.
Yes.
Yeah. So, you got to pick people, it's like, shouldn't be one-sided, but that's why there's an easy to difficult mode on most video games to begin with. This is exciting stuff. I mean, the spider web of where this book is going.
Yeah. He was also One
Oh,
other quick thing on that, he was related to not only them, but back in his day, he was related to the governor of Missouri, who had put a price on his head. He was also related to H. Craig, who was one of the police commissioners in charge of identifying the body and dealing with the alleged body of Jesse after he was allegedly shot. And he was related to all the right people, and that helps paint a picture as to how he got away with what he got away with.
well, what was interesting also, we were all at an event that he happened to show up at. Um, when he entered this place, the cameras were like immediately turned on him. But the first person he came to introduce himself to was our mother, and he wanted to shake her hand. And we thought that was really interesting that he did that.
That is really interesting. I mean, and he just calmly approached and said hello.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
and Billy Saul he had, I think he got mad when they just kind of washed their hands of him, LBJ and some others. So he wrote a tell-all book, but he wrote it only in French. I don't know why. It was just in French and never translated to any other language. But he wrote a tell-all book on how LBJ was responsible Kennedy. And it got real deep into that kind of stuff. Well, one of the men who was on the Warren Commission, which investigated the killing of Kennedy, was our former Texas State Attorney General Wagner Carr. And Wagner Carr and Billy Saul Estes claimed to have never known one another, never talked. They didn't know each other, period. Well, at this exhumation in Granbury, when we met Billy Saul, Wagner Carr was there. And I looked up and saw both of them and Billy Saul in the corner of the cemetery under a big shade tree, laughing and talking like old friends. And I thought that was kind of interesting and a little telling as well. So
It's incredibly telling, and it's also and people are so used to now. I think the X-Files broke it long ago, but then
Oh, yes.
right?
yeah,
And then now there's just show after show of historical fiction where, before this would have been, oh, that's some nice speculation. But here we are in a universe where people learn more from these historical fiction pieces, but enough to know that these inner workings, this spider web of associations are there, and that the network of plausible deniability. I mean, this is literally plausible deniability, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
There's no
When
and
you
then
connect the dots, it's crazy where the dots lead. I mean, it's just sometimes overwhelming.
it is. This is were you ready to write this right away? Was it already on your mind?
I'd had that information for the last 10 years. When I finally pieced it all together, it was shortly before our mother passed away. And I'd showed Mom, and we both agreed just to keep that to ourselves. And I don't know why. The story felt incomplete until I wrote the book. I did leave some things out, but it paints enough of a picture to complete the story in a tidy manner.
So but where it webs out, so it goes. I mean, I guess I don't want to dig too far, especially since this is a pre-sneak for everyone listening. This is not something you've talked about anywhere yet.
That's true.
Yeah.
I haven't. This is the first time I've spoken about it.
In public. This is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, shoot. Now nobody's
If you
saying.
don't hear from us in the next couple of weeks, you'll know why, Jared.
Yeah, you know what? That final going public interview is what did it. Not signing for the book, but nope.
Yeah, you'll see on the
guys.
news that I went insane and jumped off a bridge or something, and that'll be it.
Now, is it a double cross if you actually do those things and it's not them? Or is this now an invite to anyone who has had a grudge against you to have an excuse?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Oh, God, I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah.
He takes it all back. It's all fake news. Everyone listening, fake news. Insert a couple bannable words and moveon.org. So now, Teresa, did you have any hand in this third book?
No, I mean, just background, like helping them background information, but it was pretty much, I'm going to put all the blame on Danny. No.
Yeah. It was all mostly all me.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. I forgot plausible deniability. I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah,
I know, nothing.
King Kong's got nothing on me. Right. I feel like Training Day has had a lot more references lately than it deserves, but here we are. This is
Danny. I support him in all of it. Like every just what we know about what he wrote in the book when it comes out. It's all, I support him 100%.
Thank you.
Yep. So this is, I did not know I had a notification on for everyone listening. And so that blurpy sound was not expected. But so this is why when you're standing alongside him at the bridge that they're dumping you off of, it's like, I supported your decision.
Oh, totally. I'll look at it as an adventure.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True.
I tell Danny, if we're going to do it, you might as well go all in. So
why not? That's literally it. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, pretty much.
We'll be famous dead authors. You just sold more books.
Yes.
My Instagram will finally be where I wanted it for members.
Live webcam, live stream the funeral.
Yeah.
And then wait, look in the background. That is Daniel and Teresa Duke's funeral, right? But what are they doing in the background? Why are they at their own funeral? And then that is where Mission Impossible Part 12 takes off.
Yes.
The Duke's fate, author death. Okay, we're having too much fun with this. We're supposed to be more academically.
Yeah.
So
But
it is. It's so incredibly important, the subject that you're writing on. And then even tying it back to, the evidence is pretty, we've already covered the evidence for Jesse living. It's really pretty astoundingly easy. That he did it.
Yeah, well, it was a lot of work, a lot of research. The other thing on the third book, one more little tidbit, I also highlight how he knew other well-known Old West outlaw figures like Billy the Kid. They had actually had a meeting, Jesse and Billy the Kid, in Las Vegas, New Mexico in July 1879. And within a few years, both had allegedly been killed by members of their own friends or members of their gang. And I thought that was interesting. I'm not jumping into the Billy faked his death camp, but at the same time, it wouldn't shock me one bit.
Yeah, whole the entire environment where he ends up going as a direct result of faking this, the entire culture around being a new person is just fascinating to me, especially around the Civil War. There's so many the dichotomy of sciences and social structures, and so many things were changing during the Civil War. I'm in Minnesota, and a lot of people don't think much about the Kelly farm. And here it's something you go to as kids. You go up Highway 10 to the Kelly farm, where the Kelly farm is the origin of the process that we take for granted of crop rotation. And the reason Kelly was able to get in when he was brought to the South after the Civil War to teach crop rotation, the reason he had the access he did was because he was a Mason, right?
Yeah.
For those that don't know. But the idea of, we take it for granted. Well, yeah, you can't keep planting the same crop. You deprive the soil. But that seems like such an odd thing, along with what was going on with slavery, what was going on with affirming the national government as far as a national country, the very first international war tribunal, the very first international successful fight for the and ever in Geneva was against the United States. It was the United States against suing England for participating with the South during the Civil War. That was the very first convened international war tribunal, to which the British lost and paid the equivalent of trillions of dollars in pounds sterling silver to
Wow.
America. And this is all coming within years of the Civil War. By 1869, you have Frank Lloyd Wright being born. This is a bizarre time.
Very bizarre. That's
And
interesting.
yeah, so you have a
And
bunch
thinking of the U.S. going after the UK or England for the silver makes me wonder if they were. I'm sure they fought hard for it. I was just thinking of the debt incurred by the North to fund the war to begin with. They were probably hungry to get anything they could, as much as they
yeah.
could pay off that debt, because they owed Russia and several other nations.
Yeah, it was crazy. The United States had never signed the Treaty of Paris in 1836. And in this treaty, it said that no two warring nations, the belligerents, could be helped other than medical and basic needs, like any other ship. If you pulled into a port, you could repair things and you could get food and you could get medical supplies, but you could not arm either side of a conflict for war. But the United States was not, they were not invited / they were not going to participate. However, they argued in court in the 1870s that it was a civil conflict, that it wasn't, the issue wasn't that it was belligerent nations, but the English took the stance that it was that also, and not belligerent nations. And then by the definitions of the treaty, they really were helping what was declared onto itself. The South had declared itself its own nation. And
Wow.
so in doing the work that they did to get out the USS Alabama and a number of other things that happened in England, the court ultimately found for the United States that England had violated its own signatures of the 1836 Treaty of Paris, and that is the beginning of the Geneva international tribunals and conventions on international courts for anything that was between nations. It was literally the United States launching that legal process yet again at the front of it all, for something new in the world. It had never been done before, let alone.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, the very first book I ever worked on, I actually had, I had written the query and had written the first 3 chapters and outlined a book. I spent 17 months researching on it, calling it Tactics and Empire, and it was, I had some interest from a publisher, and at the time I ended up having to put it down for work, and I've always wanted to complete it. But yeah, I've spent 17 months. Truth is stranger than fiction about what happened internationally. Everyone gets excited about the Civil War in the South, but they don't realize how much was going on internationally and in international waters, and in England and in Europe. It was quite fascinating.
Wow.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah, which brings everyone, I think, full circle to the mystery of your audio video collapse today. It was, I feel like I could table this. It was in the kitchen in the library with the candlestick, and it was thrown through a window, and I got my car and I left. I feel like that's enough info for everyone to keep scratching their heads. But I mean, okay, so here's Jesse James again. Totally faking out after, I mean, the Civil War is done. They had their logical reasons for how and where they raided and trade. You know, the reason we've talked about this in other interviews for people, just the reason that they were targeting certain banks, they were supporters of the North, and they were going after banks intentionally that they thought ultimately would also help fund, you know, a somehow a resurgence of the South and its bid for independence, that it would not end with the Civil War, but it does end. And I'm wondering, do you think there's any nuances left out about? I mean, I mean, the outcome seems obvious. It's like, okay, this is just. Do you think he was just done after the fiasco in Northfield, or do you think it was that they knew the South was not going to rise up and that it had to be time for life to move on?
That's a good question. The and we've wondered a lot along those lines. You know, he didn't get in the Civil War just, you know, the loyalty to either side had nothing to do with it. The reason he got involved in the first place was for revenge. Some northern guerrilla fighters, the Redlegs from Kansas, rode onto his farm and, you know, beat him severely, pushed his pregnant mother around and hung his stepfather until he had permanent brain damage. So he wanted revenge, and that was the whole reason he got into it. Just like a lot of the other guys who rode with Quantrell's guerrillas.
Well, also the railroads.
And well, after the Civil War, that's true. The railroads, you know, were kind of running roughshod over anybody. If they wanted land, they took it, and if you went up against them, they'd run over you. And they kind of found a cause in that, I believe. But I think there were causes. I don't know when he became one of the Masons, you know, a Freemason. And I also don't know about, he was a member of several other secret societies. Like later in life, he became a member of the Knights of Labor, and that shocked me. And it just he was a member of at least two secret societies that we know of, and it's alleged he was a member of a couple of others.
Yeah, I remember.
But I do think there are a lot of there's a lot of things we may never find proof of as to why he did what he did. But sometimes it seemed he would contradict himself, as other outlaws have done. But then when you start stumbling onto this, you know, new information, and some of the stuff we found regarding secret societies, it kind of ties things together and paints a whole new picture. And it starts to answer questions that prior to that, we couldn't answer. And I hope I'm not running off. I feel like I'm running way off down a rabbit hole.
No. This is the point. This is exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Teresa.
Well, it seems like from our research, and I know we can't get into a lot of it because it kind of ties in with Danny's third book, but it goes beyond like the Civil War into like a much higher purpose, if I can say. Is that okay to say, Danny?
I've got a theory. One of my theories, and I can't prove this, is that they didn't want. I don't think. Well, this is up a big can of worms, but I don't think Jesse later in life and others who rode with him wanted the South to secede. I don't think they wanted. I think they wanted a United States. They may not have liked the way it was being ran at any particular time, but I think the goal, like when you look at all the treasures and the Tree of Life template and the Veil templates, the Veil template crosses borders, but the Tree of Life template, which I believe is more highlights treasures that are more of a spiritual or sacred nature, I don't think they would have wanted that in other nations. I think they just wanted that in the U.S. And if the U.S. would have seceded, it would have split that Tree of Life template down the center. And I know that sounds off the wall, but I think the treasures and some of the other things, the United States just as it is today.
Well, I think that's way more in line with the correct plan as we know it. I mean, at least what my understanding from a Masonic tradition and the fight between traditional European powers. I mean, doesn't it really fall more? I mean, doesn't it make conspiracy look less conspiracy?
Yes, it does. And when you start researching like the different, oh, well, just look at Freemasonry, for example. There's traditional Freemasonry, and then there's newer forms of Freemasonry popping up around the world that go against, in some areas, the traditions of traditional Freemasonry. So, you've got groups of Freemasons, and that gets a little, like they call them, we refer to them as irregular lodges. But it makes me wonder how far back that goes, and it just makes me want to dig deeper into that topic as well. But
Yeah, well, it's just these things are because of the internet and the various levels of research that are at our fingertips that weren't, if you want to go back to C.S. Lewis and it's like, well, I'm going to prove this or that or the otherwise, and it's really difficult. You have your local college and whatever they've collected, and you may have friends and associates, and you don't have access to information back in those eras. I mean, even in the 90s, the internet's new, and here we are. And the ability, I think you've done an incredible job of connecting dots. I mean, look what happened with the maps.
yeah, and just the maps alone seem to tie in with other, well, political movements and things of, well, different things. I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, the maps alone, well, not just political movements, but you've got Jesse, and then there's other outlaws who are tied in with that, and then you've got people like Jean Lafitte. According to I guess it depends on which side he was for. Some called him a pirate, famous pirate, but others said he was just a privateer. I guess that just depends on who you're robbing at the moment. But it ties in with pirates, and we all know. Well, a lot of people have read that and written about the Templar after they were raided that morning. A lot of Templar turned towards piracy, and it's interesting watching how that all unfolds, and then tying it in with some of the characters who were known to have been or had us with different groups like Freemasonry, all being tied together by the treasure stories. It seems like the treasure is valuable in itself, but the real value for me anyway, was how it tied in different people throughout various, through many centuries. It tied different people into the same movement or group, or group and movement. It's just very interesting to me. And now I'm getting tongue tied with that. So trying to keep every part of this story seems like it's got several, like a half dozen, each point has a half dozen rabbit holes you can go off down the side. And each of those rabbit holes it reminds me of fractals. They just branch off into whole new spider webs.
Yeah, when we've talked before about the maps and the treasures, and you were the one who discovered that even the Masons acknowledged that you had discovered something that no one had noticed about the maps. And we touched a little bit on it before. Have you gone any further or talked to anyone, or has anyone talked to either of you guys on saying, hey, I overlapped that map and I noticed something in Montana or in Europe? I mean, has anything come of, as you've talked about it in even other interviews, have you seen any movement about people coming to you or hearing about locations of potential treasure locations?
Yeah, a man, as last week, as a matter of fact, a man from Missouri sent me a photo. I'm not going to say his name, but he sent me a photo of some old. He had a handful of old silver coins that he said he found in Missouri, and he mentioned the template, and he just left it off with "Hope life's treating you good," and that was it. So I guess the template helped him find some silver coins. I don't know what to think of that other than that.
Wow. Well, did he say where the coins were from?
somewhere in the heart of Missouri.
No. I meant
That's all
like,
he said.
are they American coins or are they?
I couldn't tell. He showed a photo. He didn't give a description of them. He showed a photo, and it looked like a partial eagle on the back of one of the coins. They looked extremely worn, and I don't know if it was just a prank email or if the guy was telling the truth. He'd emailed me in the past a few times asking for pointers, and I told him it's all in the book. So I guess he hit the books and started figuring things out. That's the only thing I'm left to believe from that email.
That's so interesting. Is there I mean, that's the latest one, and these are all. It's so interesting. You know, people are like, well, how am I going to get rich? Well, the issue is getting rich with knowledge. Seriously, it sounds lame, but I think that connecting these stories, I think it's really unavoidable.
Yeah, the knowledge is where I'm that's what I'm after. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to I'd love to find a pot of gold, but at the same time, the knowledge, no, you can't lose the knowledge.
No, the the possibility of confirming the Templars, Vikings, which pretty much, I mean, that one's dead in there. I mean, that just appears to be the fact. I mean, I think Scott Walter's book on that, The Hooked X, I mean, really nails down the Rosetta Stone of North America really is the Kensington Ruin, and it's here in Minnesota. It's undeniably verified to be real.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's crazy. So then you have that stone, you have the hooked X, and now here we are with the Templars and Masons continuing a tradition that gets built and minted, literally minted into the Washington Capitol and the layouts in the East. And there's just so many things that continue, clearly a tradition for people who are in the know. There seems to be a top layer that is in the know, and it includes physical treasure, but this knowledge base is, I think in sharing this information and getting out there, it's not, I don't know, do you feel like it's really hurting those organizations or no?
I don't think it does. I really don't think it does. I think if it hurt them, they would have asked me to stop, and no one has asked me to stop yet. So there's probably so much more to it that I have no clue about. And that's what keeps driving me. I want to know more.
Oh, yeah. Teresa, this is a perfect time for you to talk about what you've been writing lately. Huh?
Oh,
What?
well, I'm just kind of, mine is more based off just some of the experiences we had along the way with the research and trying to, I mean, we have the research, but there's so much of a side story to all of this that in itself is a good story. So mine's just more on the side things that happened.
I do say, well, I should correct one of the things I said. I had mentioned no one's asked me to stop. On this, they haven't. But when my mother and I were at the Texas State Arco back in the late 90s, we were approached by two men who asked us not to mention certain names who were connected with Jesse, and we haven't done that. So,
And then we had another person say the same to us about some other names in history. So, and we haven't, and we kept our promise with that as well. Not sure why. They won't tell us why, but just don't want us to mention the names. So we're like, okay.
Well, see, and I, of course, just had a long pause there to see how much more you were going to reveal.
Well, yeah, it's just, there's just some things we don't even really fully understand when they come to us with some of the things they reveal to us. But then they're like, no, you can't mention this. And it's like, why? But they don't tell us why.
yeah, like the first group I'd mentioned at the Texas State Archives, they told my mother and I they said, don't mention any names that tie in with the Texas power structure. And, we didn't know what they were talking about. And Mom laughed. We looked at each other and laughed. And she said, who's the Texas power structure? And they just laughed back and said, you'll find out. And no one has ever contacted us since then. So it was just strange things like that. And the thing that gave me chills years later, um, one guy was a former Dallas cop who had his name was Jay Harrison. He was one of the men who warned us, and he's passed since then. But he was a Dallas police officer several blocks away from the shooting when JFK got killed. And he was a big researcher into the JFK mystery, but it went, the other guy was younger, the guy who was with him. And at first he said, I'm a house painter. And that's all he said. And then later he handed us his card. He was a researcher for the Texas State Bar. He was their researcher. And I got home and I got online and verified, yes, and then years later, I saw that movie, and I can't remember the name of it. Scorsese just recently made it. It was about Jimmy Hoffa. But anyway, the guy who played the hitman in the Jimmy Hoffa story called himself a house painter. And I thought, oh God, is that what that guy meant? It just kind of, just one of those little possible connections. It just made me wonder if that's what he meant when he told us he was a house painter.
That's right in there.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely, I mean, critical to not say the wrong thing, but it's so interesting because I think that these different various power structures, I don't have an issue. It's not like the people who are doing it are the ones that invented it. This is a well-established system of government that we've been involved in for, I think
yes.
since, it's not like this is new. I have, as long as the roads get done and I can turn left and right with, as long as I can get, I'm not saying the ends justifies the means here. I'm just saying that it's a structure that none of us are involved in any
Right.
capacity that, I don't see where it benefits us to interfere with it.
Oh yeah.
No, I don't need to see, I don't want to see the bobblehead Dukes that are, based on the models of them getting plopped in a river somewhere because someone said it was a river and it was a bridge
Yeah.
in a bay.
Yeah. Yeah. And then sometimes we feel like there's different groups, conflicting groups that we've come in contact with. It's just, it feels like there's just so many layers to this. Like we have different people reaching out from different groups, and I don't know. It's just a little overwhelming at times.
Well, and what when you speculate on those different groups, I mean, if it's not difficult to out or say, I mean, and what other motivations have you discovered that they would want to keep you quiet, or and what are they, religious, mystical? Are they what kind of groups? What do you think their other motivations would be?
I think the smarter, more powerful
The higher
groups
good is
never
what
really
I think
identify
of.
themselves. I'm sorry, Teresa. I didn't mean to step on you.
Oh no, I just, the one that keeps in contact with me is kind of, I've asked him before. I'm like, why can't we mention this? And his answer is just that it can disrupt the higher. It's disrupt the higher good. I don't know what he means by that, but I just take his word for it. I'm like, okay, well, it will not be mentioned.
Oh, okay. I mean, if
Yeah.
that's, and I do think there's a courtesy in when somebody comes and it's like, whatever they're operating at, they say, hey, look, just don't mention this. It's like, what skin is it off of my back?
I do think, though, to answer your question, I think it's all of the above. I feel like it's interconnected with politics, mystical elements. I think it's all intertwined. So, yeah, I think it's for all of the above. There's reasons.
And there could be I've often wondered if there's a hierarchy of groups, with some groups don't need to know certain things.